So if you're dealing with pancreatitis type symptoms, you may be watching this video because you really don't like pancreatitis type symptoms. It's really not a great time. So in this video, I just want to give you some insights that might be able to help you understand what could be creating this problem for you, along with some steps that you could take that might improve your situation. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So pancreatitis really just means you have an ouchy pancreas. I'm pretty sure that's the technical term. And I'm not a doctor, if that was not already obvious, and I'm not giving anybody medical advice. I just want to give you some insights of what may be going on so that you can ask better questions when you're talking to your doctor about this problem. So this is the pancreas here, this weird flat chicken tender looking thing, and it's actually quite fancy and does multiple jobs. It helps us produce this insulin and glucagon that are really responsible for helping us keep our blood sugar kind of regulated and in a good range. It also creates enzymes and helps us digest our food better. It also secretes some bicarbonate down in here to help us kind of neutralize the acids that leave the stomach that really are part of the important digestive process. So it has a lot of functions here. And if you start digging into pancreatitis, you find that up to 70% of cases are caused by either gallstones or alcohol abuse. That seems to be like, oh man, don't have these issues going on or you're going to kind of go over to this camp here. So that seems to be the most problematic area. And less than 2% are caused by either hypercalcemia, hyperlipidemia, or some medications that can create some trouble. And then about 31% are what they call idiopathic, which just means, I don't know why you got that. It's idiopathic. I don't know. But you also find people talking a lot about that this can occur during pregnancy. Also in the total parenteral nutrition that a lot of people do, which is kind of like an intravenous thing. And they'll say that it can happen a lot after major surgery. They even call it post-operative pancreatitis. But since I talk about digestion a lot, I have a lot of people ask me, like, what is causing the pain for the pancreatitis? What's the actual pain part of it? What's creating that inflammation or trouble? And there's a variety of things that can really create this, and there's also a lot of opinions out there. And I'm going to put links in the description below for some studies and some papers that I'm kind of referencing when I'm talking about these things, so you'll be able to dig deeper into that if you want to. But one thing that we need to think about is that if a person has a gallstone in their gallbladder and they get a gallbladder attack because this gallstone kind of blocks this duct where the bile can't move out when it's being called on, that pressure in there can really create some horrific pain. And that makes sense to us. We've heard about that for a long time. We understand that. But when we're looking at the pancreas here, it kind of secretes enzymes and bicarb and stuff right down here, and it comes through this little opening called the sphincter of Oddi. So that's what we're looking at when this is coming out. And when we're looking at the gallbladder function, it comes down here and it also comes through this little sphincter of Oddi. And this is where things are feeding down into what's called the duodenum. Some people will call it the duodenum, but I just think it's more fun to say duodenum. And that's just like the first 10 inches of the small intestine. So when the stomach acidifies food here and then it leaves and goes down here into the duodenum, then that's kind of triggering this gallbladder to squirt the alkaline bile down and come down through there. And it's triggering this pancreas to squirt enzymes and bicarb down there. And the bicarb is alkaline. That also helps us neutralize the acids. So the bile, which is alkaline, that really helps us neutralize acids that are leaving the stomach. And the pancreas does this other stuff, the bicarb, that helps a little bit too. And these enzymes are really important to help us really break that food apart so that we can get all of the nutrients out of that food. But if a person has gallstones, they can squeeze through here and get through this biliary duct. But if they come down here and kind of block up this sphincter of Oddi where things can't flow correctly, then when the pancreas is being called on, hey, it's my job, here I come, I'm going to squirt this stuff out for you. And if it can't get out because that's being kind of blocked by a gallstone, then just that pressure could create discomfort in the same way that the pressure that was this being blocked in the gallbladder was creating a lot of trouble. So there's a lot of people that feel like that's what's going on. And when we see that there's such a high percentage of these cases are actually caused by gallstones, then that makes a lot of sense. But other things that we have to think about beyond just the gallstones is I'll put some other links below. There were people talking about polyps, and I have a video about understanding gallbladder polyps, and we'll put the link to that in the description below. But sometimes these polyps are just kind of formations of this bile that has become kind of concentrated and forms into like a little lump or so on the side of this gallbladder lining. So sometimes those will just kind of slough off and come down here, and that can come there and block stuff up. But there's also a lot of information that suggests that even just the bile becoming sludged can kind of block this stuff where things won't flow correctly. That's what's creating that pressure? We don't really know in every case. It can really be different from person to person. We also hear from people that say, well, this pancreas creates these enzymes and they're stored in the pancreas in like a non-active state. And then when they come out here, they become active and they help us digest or break down these things. And they say that some of these enzymes that are kind of meant to, maybe digest carbohydrates, if those become activated in the pancreas, they're probably not going to create any trouble because there's not any starch in the pancreas. But for the enzymes that are made to help us break down protein, well, that's what our organs and tissues are made of. They're made of proteins. So if enzymes are getting activated inside the pancreas, there's a lot of people that feel like that can damage those cells or even break down tissues and create a lot of discomfort in that regard. So why would they get activated in the pancreas? I don't really know what to tell you, but there's a lot of people that feel like, well, it's secreting this bicarb that's supposed to be coming down here and kind of activating the enzymes so that they start to do the digestive process. But if that bicarb can't leave because this is all blocked up, is it kind of activating those enzymes in the pancreas? I don't know. There's a lot of people that feel like that may be what's going on. So for some people, is it just that enzymes are being activated in the wrong location and that's creating a lot of pain? That could be the case for some people. But when we look at this study that I'm going to put below, and this was really interesting, this study showed that about 50% of the people in that study had gallstones, and that's where they were having this pancreatitis issue. About 14% had alcohol abuse, and then the 34% were idiopathic. They just didn't really understand why it was happening. So the numbers seem to line up, but what was interesting in this study is that of these 34% that were in that idiopathic category, like 74% of them had some type of gallbladder sludge. So they didn't have gallstones. They couldn't fit into that gallstone category up here in the 50%, but they did have gallbladder sludge, which was slowing that flow. And a lot of people feel like even when this gets sludged up, it can block the proper flow from the pancreas and create all that trouble. So that's a lot of the percentage of people that are dealing with gallbladder problems where bile just was not flowing the way that we really want it to flow. And if you've watched other videos that I've made here, you've probably heard me talk about bile becoming too thick and sticky to flow correctly and creating other troubles as well. Because it's really common for this bile to become too thick and then not really flow out like it's supposed to. And what's really interesting is that apparently estrogen levels going too high have the ability to thicken up this bile so that it won't flow correctly. And when you look at this stuff for the pancreatitis, you'll find that some of the estrogen medications really like to be blamed for this pancreatitis. And when we're looking at this pregnancy issue, well, we know that estrogen goes really high during pregnancy and that bile often gets thick and doesn't, have gallstone issues and stuff with pregnancy and things like that. So those things kind of line up too. We also need to think about digestive malfunctions, and bile becoming too thick to flow really is the underlying cause for a lot of digestive malfunctions, like stools that are too loose and nausea and inability to digest fats correctly. The bile is very important to help us break those fats down and to be able to access fat-soluble vitamins and to be able to neutralize the acids that are leaving the stomach. So it's a really big part of all that. And one of the papers that I shared below talks about this hormone secretin that actually stimulates a lot of this pancreatic activity of it releasing all these enzymes and bicarb and such. And this secretin actually starts out as prosecretin, and it turns into the secretin when it's activated by the stomach acid. So it's those gastric juices that kind of starts this activation of steps that need to happen in order for everything to work correctly. And a lot of times when one digestive aspect isn't working correctly, it's because it didn't get triggered by other ones. I'll also put some links below that show that a lot of people feel like this gallbladder is being triggered when the acid hits this duodenum. So it's these acids coming in here that triggers the gallbladder to come down, and it's the acids that also trigger this pancreatic stuff to come down and neutralize those acids, and hey, now it's time for the enzymes to come out. So when one isn't working correctly, which is really common, that whole string of events can kind of fail. It's very common for people not to be making enough stomach acid today, or for them to be taking something that turns off stomach acid. It's very common for bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly. So if either of those things aren't working correctly, we're seeing digestive malfunctions that could lead to these types of problems with the pancreas as well. We also see that if someone is stuck in what we call a catabolic imbalance, where their body's kind of stuck in that breakdown mode and they're not really moving into the anabolic rebuild and repair state at night, that has the ability to kind of thicken up the bile so it won't flow correctly, that could lead to gallstones or sludge or polyps and all these other issues. And it's interesting because we see that this happens a lot with major surgery. We see this post-operative pancreatitis, and it was Dr. Emmanuel Rivisi who helped us understand this natural circadian rhythm of the catabolic state during the day and an anabolic state during the night. And I'll put a link in the description below for our video on understanding a catabolic imbalance if you want to learn more about that. But he kind of felt like this surgery or major surgical procedures had a very pro-catabolic effect on the body. So is that why we're seeing this with a lot of pancreatitis? I don't know. But those things line up, so it's interesting enough to pay attention to that. But because so many of these things can lead to, well, gallstones blocking this, or sludge, or some kind of thing coming down from the gallbladder and blocking the sphincter of Oddi so that things can't travel from the pancreas correctly, then it seems like making sure that your bile is thin enough to flow correctly could be an important step. So we're going to put links in the description below for our videos on 10 signs of low stomach acid and 10 signs of poor bile flow. And you can look through those and see, do I have other signs that maybe my bile isn't flowing correctly, or is maybe my stomach acid having trouble and I'm not sending the whole trigger of events that needs to happen because I don't have the ability to acidify my food correctly? Those can be important things to look at for yourself to see if those are areas where you might want to investigate a little bit more. Again, I'm not giving you answers here because I don't know your situation. You can see that this can be caused by different things. But we see that this, with this gallbladder trouble, and since so many gallstones are showing up with this, that's worth looking into. And if you know you have gallstones, we'll be sure to put a link in the description below for our video on how to save a gallbladder so you can look at some steps that might help your situation there. Another thing to think about is with this total parenteral nutrition, where a lot of times maybe there's a reason that someone shouldn't have food going in, so they'll feed them intravenously to get them nutrition and nutrients that the body needs that way. But when they're doing that, there is no food coming down here being acidified, so there's no acidification coming down into this duodenum to trigger the gallbladder into activity. So this bile in here is just staying in the gallbladder. And one of the gallbladder's jobs is to concentrate that bile so that it's more effective. So if that's just staying in there, continuing to concentrate, it can concentrate until it concentrates into sludge or even into stones. So it's also interesting that they mention that this happens a lot when this is going on, that people are dealing with these issues. Is that why? We don't know. You know, looking at person to person, we don't really know. Is it because they have gallstones or all this kind of stuff? But if you're having these symptoms and you know you have gallbladder trouble, let us know in the comments so that we can see, is this a common correlation between people and not just in studies and papers and stuff? We like to hear from actual people. So let us know in the comments if you know you have bile issues and you're having these types of symptoms. That'll be really interesting to see. But right now, if you feel like this bile not flowing correctly might be trouble for you, jump over and check out our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow so you can see some things that you could do to get that in motion and start thinning out that bile so that it can flow better. I can't wait to hear about your results.